You're listening to Soundside. I'm Paige Browning. Picture this. You wake up in the trunk of a car. You're way in debt. Now the loan sharks are going to make sure that you sleep with the fishes. We've all seen that scene in the movies. I'm being a bit dramatic, but overspending, it catches up to you. What happens when a state spends beyond its means? We're going to find out today because Moody's and Fitch, two of the three major credit rating agencies, recently moved Washington's credit outlook from stable to negative. If I'm being honest, I didn't even fully realize states had credit. I know of it as just a personal thing we have to worry about. It turns out state governments have to keep their credit scores up too. Mike Pellicciotti is Washington State's treasurer, and he's here to help us understand why this happened to Washington and what it means. Hey there, thanks for being here.
Paige, it's so great to join you.
Before we talk about how all this works, and I'm glad we're not in a mobster movie, can you tell us off the bat if it's normal for Washington's credit outlook to drop or change positively or negatively in any meaningful way? Or is this just the normal course of managing a budget and debts?
Well, I do think it's a serious issue. We have not had an issue where there's a potential negative outlook for quite some time now. But I will start with some good news, which is what our current credit rating is a Moody's AAA credit rating, which is the top credit rating that you can have. And so there's never been an opportunity to go in any other direction at this point now that we're the best. But a negative outlook indicates that they may downgrade our credit in a year if the legislature doesn't fix some things related to their budgeting practice.
And as we noted, they've changed the outlook, but this isn't the same thing as a credit rating dropping, right? That would be worse?
Right. It's not a downgrade yet. And I think you were hitting on something I think is really important for your viewers to understand. It's kind of like a credit score that we get. Every state gets it in the same way an individual gets a credit score, which helps determine whether people loan them money, how much money they're willing to loan them.
What your interest rate is?
Exactly right. And
took the words right out of your mouth.
You got it. And so, yeah, it's essentially states get the same thing. All governments get credit score as well, but it's called a credit rating. And it's really important for all the reasons you've described. And it's something we need to make sure we hold on to here in the state of Washington because we have the best credit rating for Moody's, but we can't let that slip.
I'm curious about the AAA bond rating. Is that just something that we've had for a long, long time and we should expect of a state?
Our credit rating in Washington state has actually been increasing for decades, and we've got to AAA credit rating only about 6 years ago for the first time. So we've always actually been on a positive trajectory, but that is something that you shouldn't take for granted. Washington State's credit ratings right now are stronger than the federal government's for the first time in history this year. But that's mainly because the federal government's credit ratings have been dropping.
Has gone down. I see.
So we need to make sure we continue to maintain our strengths with that.
Why did Washington State's outlook drop to negative?
Well, Moody's kind of laid it out for us. I mean, they kind of issue a report, and it's one of the things that I've been raising concerns about for the last couple of years. We make very specific recommendations in the Treasurer's office to the legislature, to each legislator, talking about kind of the guardrails in which the legislature needs to be budgeting within. It's almost like a three-legged stool of good financial health. The first relates to pensions, making sure those are well funded. The legislature has followed that recommendation. The next relates to the amount of bonds or debt that we actually issue. The legislature has followed that to maintain a manageable debt load.
Okay.
The third issue relates to the reserves, which is kind of like the rainy day savings that the state has. And we make a specific recommendations that it should not fall below 10% of the total revenue coming in for the state. So in other words, if you have $40 million in revenue, or $40 billion in revenue, you should have at least $44 billion sitting in reserves.
I see.
And the legislature has allowed that number to fall below that. And that's where I've had concerns. I've raised those concerns. And now Moody's is expressing the exact same concerns related to our credit rating.
And maybe if you could just elaborate on this, does it mean we're doing something risky when that rainy day fund especially is dropping below 10%?
Well, what I've always said is it is risky to let it drop below 10% for a number of reasons. One, because, you have the rainy day fund for a reason. Last time it was tapped into in a major way was during COVID. Government services stayed stable during that time, despite revenue falling off a cliff.
And that's what it's there for.
And that's what it's there for. Emergencies like that. We have one of the, if not the lowest reserve level in the country here in the state of Washington now. The state of Washington has the lowest reserve level of all 50 states.
Not a place you want to be necessarily.
Not a place you want to be. Now, one of the other things we do well here in the state of Washington is the legislature does a 4-year budget opposed to a 1 or 2 year budget. And that is one of the reasons we've been able to maintain lower reserves, because we show we can keep things balanced over a period of time. But what is showing up now in that 4-year budget is that in year 2027, year 2028, the reserve level is getting too low in the way that they're balancing things out until new revenue comes in 2029.
Why are we borrowing so much money, especially from ourselves in that rainy day fund? And why don't we have enough to just pay off our normal spending?
Well, I guess one of the things that's important is to kind of step back and say, hey, the legislature passes 3 budgets every year. The first budget is the big budget you hear the most about. That's the operating budget. That's the money in and money out for the state of Washington. It's the operating budget. But there are 2 other budgets the legislature passes every year as well. And those are for building tangible things. That's the capital budget and the transportation budget. So you might imagine the capital budget or capital projects, maybe a new university building or a civic center or, a dock or
physical
conservation
stuff.
effort, physical stuff, or the transportation budget, also physical things. Bridges, roads, ferries. These are tangible physical things. So for the transportation and capital budget, those budgets are funded primarily through the issuance of things called bonds, which is essentially government borrowing money. It's kind of like your mortgage. You get the house up front, and you pay it back over the life of that house. You get the car loan, you get the car up front, you pay it over the life of that car. That's what government does when it issues bonds for these tangible things. So the legislature isn't taking out any debt for the operating budget. But what's important is out of the operating budget is how you pay back the bonds that have to be paid, those payments that have to be made for the capital and transportation budgets. And so you want to keep those actual bond levels pretty low of those 2 budgets, because that makes things more affordable because you're paying less out of that. But that's what they have followed related to our recommendation as to a manageable debt load. What is the concern is, in addition to that, you still have to have money in savings. So even if you're paying you have enough money to pay your mortgage based on your income coming in at any given month into your checking account, you still need to have savings.
You got to have savings.
Bingo.
So an emergency comes up or you want to make another big purchase.
You got it. And that's the number that's gotten too low. And that's where the Moody's has said, hey, your number's too low. And I don't need to tell any of your listeners, I mean, there are no shortage of volatile situations going on right now related to the economy. One of the things that our office has been focused on, and I think done a very effective job, is preparing for unlawful federal withholdings by the Trump administration against the state of Washington. That's what we've been preparing for since August of 2024. And I think done a very effective job on that. But
talking about like money that's been approved to come to Washington that might be withheld.
Where congressionally authorized funds, the president and the executive branch has to just write that check and has unlawfully withheld that. Well, with good partnership with the governor and the attorney general, we've been actually able to kind of take those hits and kind of keep on going. They try to change our policies, and we say, no, thank you. The 10th Amendment of the Constitution doesn't allow for you to kind of force us and compel us to change our policies based on withholding money. But you got to have the money in the bank to be able to withstand that. And that's the shield that protects Washington State. And that's why it's important for that reason as well.
So right now, the outlook is negative. The rating has not dropped. But what happens if and when the credit rating does go down?
That's part of the reason why I've been talking so much about this is I want to make sure that doesn't happen. And this is something totally in the control of the legislature. This is not a situation where Moody's is identifying an economic change or some type of economic condition or a weakening of even our state economy. They're saying it's a budgeting issue. And, I've been describing it kind of like the check engine light on your car's gone on. Well, you got to take the car in and fix it. Now, the good news is Moody's is saying, well, you have a year. We're going to kind of see how we don't really like how you've budgeted this last session. We're going to see how you budget this next session, see if you fix it. And if you don't, then I think we can anticipate a downgrade, which would just cost Washingtonians more money. And it's an independent assessment, honestly, of the direction of our financial strength.
What could be those impacts if it does get rated down? Well,
there's a cost impact almost immediately because, a AAA rated bond, when we issue those bonds, we can do so. There's more demand for them because they know we're credit worthy. And so as a result, people will require less interest payments in order to buy our bonds. It's kind of like, again, with the credit score. Strong credit means you get a lower interest rate. Well, again, the capital and transportation budgets are how we're paying for all these things. So that interest rate matters and you get more bang for the buck. Right? You get more bridge, road, ferry. You're not burning it in wasted interest payments to Wall Street. And that's been a big focus of mine is keeping those interest rates low, keep more money going back to the people of the state of Washington, not to big banks, and make it so that, ultimately, by having a strong credit rating, we're paying less in interest. But to answer your question directly, it'd be about at least $60 million a year just in lost interest payments if there was just a single downgrade. And if there was even more than that, I mean, that's $250 million on the 4-year budget, just burning money for no good reason. And that's why all you got to do is have some money in the savings, which is a good idea either way, but it also then will preserve our credit, and that's why it really needs to take place.
Yeah, that's some pretty immediate changes for Washington.
Absolutely.
And $60 million lost each year. And as you're telling me about the impacts we could see if the credit rating drops, who else in the state could be impacted by this? I imagine it's not just the state government.
It's not just the state. So local school districts, for example, would be impacted because in the Treasurer's office, we have a school bond guarantee program where we actually back up local school districts on the bonds that they issue. So our credit rating at the state is essentially the credit rating for all school districts, no matter how small. And so it matters a lot because it's hard enough for local school districts to pass bonds as it is. Well, that's with essentially a AAA credit rating, meaning they get more bang for the buck. They get more gymnasium and more school building. Well, if you get less of that, then it's a harder sell to the public for the taxes that are going to be paid on that bond for what they're actually getting delivered.
Then less improvements for the schools.
Exactly.
Yeah. How are you thinking about improving Washington's financial outlook? I know you said we've got to do it. We've got a year. How do we do it? It's about balancing the budget, it sounds like.
What I'd be asking is to have the legislature follow our office's recommendations. Our recommendations haven't changed. They've been quite consistent. And the legislature has followed them. So what does it mean? It means we've maintained a AAA credit rating. And actually, U.S. News and World Report has rated Washington State #1 in the nation for long-term fiscal stability for 2 consecutive years. All these things matter. I mean, strong financial strength is our shield against the Trump administration. That's just the reality. And we can't kind of make short-term decisions that impact our long-term fiscal strength. But it's also recognizing that over the next 2 years, we need to shore up some of those reserves, not only to continue to shield ourselves from the Trump administration, but to maintain our credit rating, which is an incredibly important tool as well, because when you need to borrow money in a pinch for an emergency situation, you need to have the ability to be credit worthy where folks are willing to loan you a couple $2 billion when you need it.
And is this mostly conversations that are needed between you and the legislature or you and the governor?
Well, I think it's all the above. Our recommendations are public recommendations. We email all the legislators. They are no secret. I say the same things behind closed doors that I say publicly. It's the exact same recommendations. And ultimately, look, the legislature controls the purse. They make these budget decisions. That said, I think it's very important that they follow these recommendations because it will assure that we maintain the financial strength necessary, not only to save Washingtonians money and show we can continue to mind the store and budget responsibly, but it also is critical to keep that shield up around the state of Washington from any type of unlawful actions coming from the federal government and maintain our resilience against economic issues that we're seeing from the federal chaos playing out, both overseas and obviously just economic challenges on the horizon in general.
My last question for you is, how much does this really matter in the grand scheme of things? How worried should we be?
Well, I think good government is always important. Let's start with that. And we shouldn't kind of step in it. I mean, this is one of these things where it's important that part of good government is making sure we're meeting minimal expectations. AAA credit rating is important. It really is part of the financial strength of the state of Washington. But also, we just shouldn't be burning money. Why waste money in interest payments when we don't have to? We should instead get more money. We have many needs for the people of the state of Washington that need to be met. And when you handle things well, you get more services to the people. You're not wasting money in ways that you're increasing taxes for folks who are barely getting by as it is. It is getting harder and harder for folks to get by. We should be doing everything we can as a government to make sure that we're lightening the load for folks. And this is an important way to do that. I understand legislature has tough decisions it has to make. But I always say, what legislators hear from with constituents is either, I don't want any cuts, and I don't want any new taxes. Sometimes the same constituent says the same thing to the same member of the legislature, the same legislator at the same time. But the concern is always that they're going to take door number 3, raid reserves, raid pensions, these things that are not kind of good government options that then lead to negative economic spirals. We need to stay on our positive economic spiral, which we've been able to do for the last several years.
Yeah, I'm thinking if I let my credit card bill go up and my interest payments get high, that hurts me. I mean, that hurts. But when the state does it, that's affecting everyone who lives here.
Every Washingtonian. And it doesn't get better because the problem is if you're having a hard time paying your bills and then now your interest rates go up on the credit card you have to pay. Well, that's the negative
Gets even
spiral.
harder,
It gets
yeah.
harder. And we want to, but again, we see people with wealth, life gets easier for them. The more money you have, the easier it gets. And you go in a positive economic spiral. Well, it's not a whole lot different for states or other governments. We need a Washington state to stay on that positive economic spiral, which allows for us ultimately for the legislature just to provide more services necessary to meet the needs of the people of the state of Washington.
Washington State still has a AAA credit rating as of today. Mike Pellicciotti is the treasurer for Washington State. Thank you so much for being here.
Paige, it was really a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime right here online at KUOW.org, or of course on your favorite podcast app.